It's so irritating because I have 1 week where I say I don't want to do the podcast this week because I flew in at 6:10 in the morning the day I was meant to record, and I'd scrapped previous content because I was like, I just didn't want it to be public knowledge what I was talking about. And then it turns into she's quitting and she's being manipulative and controlling the narrative. In this article, it says that the podcast is doing really badly, and Abbie knows that. The numbers are going down. As far as I don't look at the numbers, I think it's your head. I never have looked at the numbers, but the podcast is enjoyable for me. It's also, to be blunt, making more money than ever. And, you know, it's the reason why I can do sold out tours and add extra shows. I'm going to add more live shows. It's the reason I got my radio gig. It's the reason I got FBoy Island, I think. It's the most direct form of communication to you guys. It's where I put all my rants now, you know, like I used to do so much on Instagram. So it's just like, I admit one weakness, right? And I go, weakness. And I go, I'm exhausted. I was on a retreat from being a workaholic. And then it's like, she's trying to control the narrative. She's really manipulative. It just confirms my worst fears as someone in media who does so much that whenever you say, you know what, it's too much now. There's been a lot of praise from you guys, but from other media forms, they want to find a negative spin on it. And it's like, wow, she's actually like giving up. She's actually like, I'm not doing very well. And she knows it isn't doing very well. So she decided to give it up. My podcast is I'm enjoying it. I think the content could be more intricate and I could do more content. That's what I mean when I'm spending more time thinking about it. I don't think it's shit. I like my podcast. I think it's good. If I didn't think it was good, we wouldn't upload it, which we've scrapped episodes before. The numbers do well. It makes money. You guys love it. I get DMs every episode I put out. It's irritating. I was going to go in after an international flight that landed at 6 in, and then I put up a boundary, the smallest, most reasonable boundary. I went, actually, because my producer was like, you have to do that. Let's do something else. And I was like, no, I'll come in. And then at the retreat, I was like, actually, my producers are right. I can just have 1 week off. 1 week off. And then it turns into she's given up. And it's sad. And she's leaving her fans. I'm not, guys. I literally, the last thing I quit will be this podcast. I'm telling you. I would quit radio and TV before I quit the podcast. The podcast is the most me thing that exists in media. The last thing I will do is quit my podcast. I'm telling you that right now. I'm reprioritizing other things in my life so that I can be the best version of me in all my jobs. So to be clear, out of all my millions of jobs and all the millions of things that I do, the last thing I would give up on is the podcast. Just so you're aware. I usually would ignore this, but it's irritating me because it could mean people unsubscribe or are like, well, I'm not getting that content from her anymore. I'm not giving up the podcast. I love the podcast. There are other things in my life that I'm rearranging and reprioritizing, work-wise and personal life-wise, that I'm trying to figure out. The main thing, honestly, is realizing that I don't have to take on more work. I'm not quitting much. I'm not taking on any more work because I always say yes to everything. That's the main thing, if you must know. And then I need to over-explain that. Anyway, I'm not quitting the podcast. And it's very irritating. And this is why people don't share things with the general public about how they're feeling, because when you do, it's like she's controlling the narrative and she's decided that she's going to make us think that it's from burnout, but actually she just wants to stop doing it. If I did quit a job, it would be from burnout or because I didn't want to be there anymore or because I didn't feel that it served me or the audience anymore. There is no nefarious reason why or malicious reason why I would quit the podcast if I was. I'm not. But this explanation is she wants us to think it's burnout. Have you seen how many things I've done this year? Even if I was quitting, it would be from burnout. If there's any reason why I quit anything, it's only from burnout and the level that I got to at the start of the year that was so dangerous that I have to change something, and I'm figuring out what that is. I'm allowed to reprioritize things and jobs and quit things for whatever reason that I want to quit them for. It isn't malicious and it isn't, some secret conspiracy. I recorded that fucking voice note lying in bed about to go to sleep in Thailand after like 5 million massages in a day because I had an epiphany in my massage that I'm not actually living my fucking life. And if you listen to the podcast, you would hear me say that I realized that if I got hit by a car, I haven't seen my friends for 6 months to a year. My people that I love the most in Queensland and people that live in Melbourne now, like, that was the reason why I decided to have the day off, the day I got home from an international trip. So it wasn't, I don't sit in the lair and predetermine things and wring my hands and go, how can I control the narrative? Like, calm down. Like, Talk to Me on Your podcast is in the top 20 podcasts in the country for over 2 years. It goes up and down, absolutely, as most podcasts do. But I don't really care about rankings. What I care about is if people are enjoying the content. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest, what I really, really, really care about is doing live tours. And the podcast is the foreplay for the live show. Speaking of, actually, which cities should I go to as more trauma dump shows? Because I want to do more because I feel like that fucking show was so good. So here we go. Me controlling the narrative again, spinning it into a positive. How dare I? Tell me in the question box which cities you would want the trauma dump tour to come to that weren't the ones that I went to. Melbourne, I might consider doing a second one that's a bit smaller.